Videographer has a beautiful story for Christmas. He says there was a rich, powerful, known king who in his might was ruling, and he conquered many territories. But then he fell in love with a servant girl. And he liked her so much, he wanted to have her as his life partner. And now the embarrassment, confusion of this great king was this: how to communicate with that servant girl. You can just imagine a powerful king who has army, who has generals, who is sitting on a throne, who wields power over his people. Now a servant girl, to communicate that news would be a difficult task. At one point he thought that he would embellish her secretly, giving her everything that she needed through a third party without her knowledge, to raise her to the status of a princess so that eventually he could marry her. But then someone told that would be a folly that would be discovered later, and consequently that is not the way to go. And he was really grieving how to communicate and have her friendship and have this woman as his life partner. And after a long time, he slowly realized there was only one way to do that. One day, what did he do? He removed his outer robe, he removed his crown, he came down from his throne, and he dressed himself as a very ordinary servant and slipped out of the palace to meet with this girl. And then Søren Kierkegaard asks, did she accept him? Probably yes. Because in order to communicate with a person, we need to come to that level of the person. Then only we are capable of establishing a relationship. Therefore, that is what we are celebrating in Christmas. That is what we heard in the second reading from the letter to the Hebrews. In the past, God tried to communicate in various ways through the prophets, but in the last days He has communicated this great news through His only Son. The Word was with God, the Word was God. In the beginning, the Word was with God, and God created everything through the Word. And ultimately, what God shared with the Word, that is Jesus Christ, is life. That's why Jesus beautifully said in John's Gospel, chapter 10, verse 10, I came into this world to give life and life in abundance. And that is what Jesus wants to give us. You know, when we think about God, dear friends, very often we think that it should be scientifically proved. You know, we need to find out where is God. Does God exist or not? No human person is capable of proving that. No human person, no science can prove that. You can send all sorts of sophisticated instruments to the space and to other planets to find out the existence of life or not, but to prove God, impossible. Where is the proof? Where is the proof for God? The human heart. Human heart is the best place to prove the existence of God, and that's why the great Saint Augustine cried out loudly. He said, Lord, our hearts are restless until they rest in Thee. That's it. And that's why the human heart must be a place for God. And that is what Jesus, coming down from heaven, shows us, that only by becoming human person, I am capable of contacting a human person, to call for a relationship, to call for friendship. You know why he was born on a manger. According to Prophet Malachi, he would come suddenly to the temple. He would come like a warrior. He would come like a purifier. He would have a sword. Nothing happened of that kind. God came as an ordinary human person. And that's why yesterday Eve Christmas Eve Mass that Joseph and Mary traveled from Nazareth, from Galilee to Bethlehem because they had to register their names. That great King Augustus wanted to take the census of the whole world, and all people traveled, and they had to travel to Bethlehem because they were from that place. And when they went there, they couldn't find a place in the inn. That was an embarrassing situation. And we might ask why there was no place in the inn, because if all people were traveling to their destination, they had to find a place to stay. The inn was a sort of motel or hotel today. Now, why stable? Jesus was born in a stable, on a manger. Why? That question comes to us. Was it an invention of Joseph? Absolutely not. Today, when you look at a hotel or a motel, what do you find at the backyard? Today, sophisticated hotels, we have underground, right? What do we have? The parking lots. The stable was a parking lot of the inn. Because people would travel those days not by sophisticated cars and vehicles. They had their chariots, they had their animals, they had their camels, they had their horses, they had their mules. They had to park them somewhere, and that is why at the backyard of the inn there was the stable, and Joseph thought in a very creative way, this is the place we have available for this great person to be born. And that's why Jesus was born in a manger. We find that simplicity around. He was not born in a palace, on a stable, swaddling clothes. His friends were the shepherds. Joseph and Mary, the simple and humblest parents, taking care of him. And now, there was Cezar Augustus in Rome with all his army, might and power ruling over. He had his army, but Jesus did not have an army. But he had an army. And what was that army? When the shepherds were in the field, there appeared a great host of angels crying out, "Glory to God in the highest, and peace to all people of goodwill." That is the peace that was proclaimed by prophet Isaiah, the messenger who brings good news. Blessed are his feet, because he announces peace, he brings good news, he announces salvation. Dear friends, one thing that we have to celebrate today is to open our hearts for Jesus Christ. We will not find him anywhere else than in our heart. Now today, we are going to have a big meal for the homeless very close here in the Millennium Tower, Millennium Hall. That is a good gesture of a family. Every year we have for Easter and Christmas. And in Guardian Angels, we have this program for homeless. We give sandwiches from Tuesday to Friday. Now, this is where we make space for Jesus. And now, when we look at the world scenario, what is happening all over the world? There is no place in the inn. There are 3 million and more people cast out from Syria and Iraq. They are in the deserted place. There is no place in the inn for the poor and the homeless. Of course, we cannot accommodate all those people in our heart, in our homes. But then there is someone who takes care of them. And that is the glory of God, coming down from heaven to be with us. And that's why we need to find that joy in our heart. Christianity, dear friends, is not a religion of sadness. Absolutely not. This I have been repeating over and over again. If someone thinks that Christianity is a religion of sadness, he or she is wrong. Christianity is a religion of light. It is a faith experience of love. It is a faith experience of sharing. And that is why that beautiful story I told you in the beginning actually happens right amidst us. That God is coming like a babe to be with us, so that he can grow among us. That's why Jesus beautifully said, where is God's kingdom? God's kingdom is within us. It is among us. Now, as usual, there are some people who cannot believe the story of Christmas. Actually, during the time of Romans, during this time, they were celebrating the unconquerable, invincible sun. If you cosmologically see, These days we are having longer days. Am I right? We start from December 22nd onwards. But in those days they were celebrating practically on December 25th what is called the invincible sun, the power of the sun. We can just imagine when the sun is not there, we feel sad. When there is a cloudy day, we feel a little bit low, right? But when the sun is there, oh, bright day, so beautiful. They were celebrating the birth of the sun. Dies Natalis Solis Invicti was the day. That is in Latin. It is the day that the sun would become bigger or the days would become longer. That is what we are celebrating. Christ, when He comes into our life, our days become longer and life becomes better. The quality of life becomes better and we are capable of enjoying and celebrating. There was a man who never believed in the story of Christmas. He always said to his wife, who was a very faithful Catholic, and they had 3 children, he was always saying, oh, these are fairy tales, I don't believe. How can God become man? How can God be born in a family? It's impossible. And on the Christmas Eve day, when his wife and children were ready to go to the church, they said, you come with us, we will celebrate. And this man said, if I were to go to the church, I will be really hypocritical. I would be a hypocrite, I don't believe. You go, have your devotion, have your prayers and come back home, I will wait for you and then we will celebrate here. And it was a very cold winter night. And they went to the church. This man was alone at the fireplace, warming himself, and there, the snow started coming down, the big flurries of snow coming down, and he looked outside and said, if there is a Christmas, it should be a white Christmas. In some way, he thought it should be a white Christmas. And then, as he was warming himself at the fireplace, a big tug at the window, and another noise. Then he thought, most probably some people are making snowballs and throwing at his window. And then he went out and saw there was nobody. But he was surprised to find a number of birds that were caught in the snowstorm had landed around his house. So many birds, and he felt pity on those birds. And at one point he said, I need to give comfort to these birds. So how to give comfort? He opened the barn that was very close to his house, and he shooed all the birds into the barn, but they would not budge. Then he went to the kitchen, he brought some bread, powdered the bread, and he made the trail of the bread into the barn, but they would not budge at all. At one point he said, probably these birds are thinking about me as a very strange creature. And he said, well, in order to convince these birds, if I were a bird, it would have been nice for me to lead all these birds into the barn. And at that moment, the church bells pealed, and then he remembered his wife's word, God becoming human person. Then he realized the mystery of Christmas. God becoming human, I becoming a bird. Now I understand why there is Christmas. And he fell on his knees and believed in Christmas story. Dear friends, this is what happens in our daily life. Christmas is not external celebration. It is a celebration of the heart. It is making space for Jesus. And making space for Jesus is in our daily life, listening to the words of Christ when He said, whatever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, you do unto me. God bless you. Kindly rise, give us a song.